Let's take a look at some charts on ETH from this week's article on Brave New Coin. So ETH is at 750 right now, 749 and change. And the question becomes, as we're pushing higher highs, basically new 2-year highs, essentially. I mean, this stuff was 2018, 2017, FOMO froth, ICO madness, insanity, treasuries buying and selling, just insane stuff, right? It was the equivalent of like 13K for BTC, 1300 rather, the previous all-time high. How like that whole run-up was kind of iffy due to the Willy bot or whatever else was going on Mt. Gox. And we had a similar situation with unsustainable buying, unrealistic demand continuation there. So looking at these highs now, it's kind of difficult to like look back at that situation and say, okay, this is this resistance, that support. People are still going to look at it because it's on the chart, but you're almost better off just starting fresh. So in talking about price targets during a bull run where there's really been no large amount of price action, it's good to look at a few things. I'm going to break them down in the article. The first one is these fib extensions. So on TradingView, you'll see Fibonacci retracements or Crypto Watch or wherever. And you pick a high, you pick a low, or you pick a low and you pick a high. It'll project them down if it's bearish. In this case, it's bullish. So we can take the all-time high to the 2018 low, and that'll give us two things. It'll give us a 50%, which is about 740. And we're kind of there now. So we're 50% of the way from this high to low. And then the next thing I look at is this 1618, currently sitting at 2300. So that's going to be a level to watch beyond the next all-time high. So as we approach a new all-time high, 2300 is going to be the level to watch, definitely. In the meantime, what you can do is you can fib out this high to this low, a more recent high to low. You'll see it's even respected here. I mean, it's always weird, right? Maybe it is what it is. Maybe it's some sort of bias or whatever, confirmation bias. But we hit the 1618. We were supported on the previous resistance, and then we broke through it. And now we're at the 2618. So what I have on here is the 2618, the 3618, and the 4618. And you can do that once you pick a high on the low, or you can pick a fresh high and low. I'm lazy. I just like to leave it here. So that's what it is. So on the upside, we're looking at 926 and 1150. Those would be the next two big resistance levels based on the Fibonacci extensions. And we can see how that typically looks for any chart pattern or any sort of projection target. We typically reach some sort of level, acknowledge that level is there, and then we consolidate and make a decision on higher highs or lower or bearish reversal. But it's a wait and see situation once we get to 930, once we get to 1150. Definitely a wait and see. If we look at yearly pivots also projecting R5 resistance basically at 755, which is kind of where we are right now, where price acknowledged that there was some resistance. So beyond this, you can actually calculate R6, R7, R8. You can do that with math. So these calculate based on highs and lows of the previous year in print on January 1st. So we'll get fresh pivots in a few days here because it's the new year, and then those will be the next set of support resistance levels to watch. Now, because the year was volatile, the pivots will expand. You can see the previous year, 2019, was relatively contained, so the pivots were tighter. In 2021, the pivots are going to look like they did in 2019 because we got all this down volatility. So we get some pivot expansion, some fresh support resist targets. Definitely watch for that. Right now, it's no surprise we are just sitting near this R5 yearly pivot. And if we look at how that plays out for BTC, I always point to this 2016 to 2018 run where we just bounce it. We climb it like a ladder. You can see how the pivots were super tight here because the previous year was basically flat. Then they expanded again. And then it actually predicted the bottom on January 1st of the down move. And once we make it past R5, then we're just in new craziness territory, right? Like the acceleration is outpacing math at that point for the previous year's pivots. So these are always good to look at and just keep on your chart. I have them on my chart all the time. High time frame stuff. You can look at monthly, daily, weekly pivots. I like the yearly pivots because price typically respects them either briefly or for a greater amount of time, you know, like it did here. It bounced and then didn't go lower. But it's always good to look at it here. It bounced down, didn't go lower. You know, I can pick and choose levels here that I think look good based on hindsight. But the important part is to have these on your chart ahead of time, like for ETH, and say, okay, if we break this pivot, we're going here. If we break this pivot, we're going here. If we break this pivot, we're going here, that sort of thing. If we break this pivot, we're going here. And you use this in alignment with the fibs, and then you get really good support resist levels. Something else I've really liked is the moving average multiplier. So now that some of these altcoins have enough data to do this, the green line is actually the year moving average, so the 365 moving average. And this is the 4x or the 3x. I forget what I did for ETH, but you can adjust it. You have to curve fit this slightly. You have to backtest it, basically. You have to say, okay, what makes more sense here? The 365, the 183, which is the half year, or the 730, the 2 year for Bitcoin's case. And then the multiplier you can adjust 3, 4, 5x, depending on how it looks based on the previous highs. So what this is telling me is we are definitely out of the buy zone. This is the green is the buy zone, red is the sell zone. You're going to want to DCA into a position once we break down, as we have just 4 times since 2016. And you're going to want to DCA out of a position, sell your position once we break the red line here. Then you want to make sure you're out of everything by the time we break down from the red line. So that's predicting a target of 1600, which is more than a 2x from here. And you can look at this indicator on any chart you want. Here's Tesla, just some random chart that's like mooning, and you can see it's above its be careful up here territory. You can see the buys are highlighted nicely here. This is the 2-year MA in this case, and then times 3, 4, 5. I can't remember exactly, but I'm just curve fitting based on these highs, and then you're saying, okay, it's more overbought than it was in 2013, 2014. So for ETH, I'm not expecting anything beyond whatever the price is going to be once we get there, but it's going to be above 1600. So maybe it's 2000, maybe it's 2200. Somewhere in there is probably likely where the bubble top is going to end up. Then lastly, Pitchfork. Love the Pitchfork because it gives a projection for the rate of change. It gives you levels, much like the pivots. It gives you support and resist levels, and you can see how it respects various levels. So the first step is to draw 3 points on the chart. Usually should be extremely obvious highs and lows. Low, low. You can pick this high or this high. I like to be more conservative. Go for this high. And you can see how it will support at very interesting levels on this Pitchfork. Ideally along the diagonals. It'll find resistance along the diagonals. That's how you know you've got an actual indicator you can rely on in the future. The idea is if it's respecting those levels for, a year prior, it's going to continue to respect those levels. And we're projecting target of 1050 plus at this point. So just like the MA multiplier, you're going to want to sell up here, buy down here, just based on rate of change and the median line, which is the ultimate magnet for price. Once we get rejected up here, it's going to want to return to the median line. So overall, things look extremely bullish for ETH with new all-time highs, very likely sometime in 2021.